My name is Bernard Sweeney. I'm an Irish traveller and I'm based here in Sligo. I'm on a mission in life and I have been all my life, and that is to overcome all of what has happened to Irish travellers, all of that trauma. Not just Irish travellers, west of Ireland, not just the west of Ireland, beyond the Pale, not just beyond the Pale, but the Pale itself. It's historical. You often hear of intergenerational trauma, and it's a very true thing. I believe that because we've gone through a few generations of it. Uh, and it's not easy, it's challenging, it's difficult, and all that goes with that. Of course, that can happen within any family. One misfortune along the chain link, and it crumbles, it falls, and it'll take a lot to kind of rebuild it or get back on your feet, so to speak. So that's quite common with a lot of individual families. It doesn't matter about just travellers or not, or west of Ireland or not, or beyond the Pale or not. It happens. It happens globally. But I guess where I'm come from with the arts is trying to heal generations of trauma, not just for Irish travellers, but the whole of Ireland. Because there has been so much trauma in Ireland that was never addressed, never talked about, not even understood, I'd imagine, most of it. And when I believe this is playing havoc with people in the present. Outbursts of anger and left wings and right wings and all this kind of stuff. Manifestations of colonization, I believe. A lot of people in the country would not be aware that colonization really never had ended. It only changed labels in 1922 because all the institutions, with all respects, have their origins in Westminster. And I think this has played havoc with people, their confusion around Irish identity and the not knowing who Irish travellers are. And prior to that, they called us tinkers, and prior to that, we were called itinerants. And all of these labels, up to a certain point, were constructs of English colonisation. And it's not to blame the English, they had a complex history themselves. It's not even really about colonisation, it isn't really about history, even if I do a lot of talking about history. And the reason I do is because it's playing out in the present day. Right back to itinerants and wild Irish, we were a Gaelic culture, and the word tinker and itinerant are English words that came in the 16th century. And somehow or another, they had to manage to stick with us right through 1922, where we were called itinerants, tinkers, and travellers, all the same people. And the reason we've figured out, is because the majority of the island who were never taught or taught anything about colonisation to a great extent in Ireland, and were never taught about their own identity or the forming of the state, such as they're all English institutions, unchanged. So the majority were being educated, and an older word used to be indoctrinated, but they're being educated and by laws which also have their origins in Westminster. So right to this day, these laws exist. They call them Irish laws and Irish systems, but they're not. They're English laws and English systems. And from 1922, Irish travellers remained the main target, as we were for hundreds of years, by the English, through penal laws, martial laws, apartheid laws, English laws, and so on and so forth. And of course, many other Irish went through this. They were same families, same clans, same society, same Gaelic world, whatever you want to call it. That included Normans, French, Spanish, English, and also it's all about mentalities, nothing to do with genetics or anything like that. So them systems continued to play out in 1922, and we became the target. We remain the target of them systems, and this is why we say it's systematic oppression, institutionalized oppression. The unfortunate thing is that the majority of the island are not aware of this. They grew up believing, being told, being taught that they were the default normal Irish, and that Irish tribes were something else. They were other. And of course, unfortunately, the current narrative held by national travel organisations has not helped, despite the fact community protesting internally for many, many years. So it wasn't just myself saying this. It's just myself who spent a lot of time trying to work it out, I guess. And it all comes down to mentalities, the Gaelic mentality and the mentality of the empire. And it's more complex because we don't blame any empire, we don't blame Dublin, and we don't blame the settled people, we don't blame anyone. We don't blame ourselves any longer either, because we know it's a very complex colonial issue we're talking about. So let me just finish off by saying, because I don't want to create a divide, because the divides are already there. Like, we've got children killing themselves, so there isn't any more of a divide than that. But the divide was caused by English colonization, because the majority, once you're using the label settled, and have remained in an English environment, English culture, because culture is made up of systems and programs and ways of thinking. And all of that, like I said to you, it's the same English systems that had colonized everybody in the first place. So the majority of the islands saying that they're the default Irish, and we don't care. It's just when they went to the extremes and tried to tell us that we're from India and we're Roma and we're Gypsies and failed Irish and whatever, thrown out during the famine. Wouldn't matter if we came into existence 50 years ago. It is absolutely no way to treat people, segregated, institutionalized, and even had care homes specifically just for the itinerants and the tinkers, away from the settled population, because they wanted to keep us away from the settled population. Because what I'm saying right here, right now, nobody else can say it like this or talk about it like this unless they are who they say they are. So tinkers, travellers, itinerants, pavies, you can call us knackers, you've called us everything else, and that's been going on for centuries. We don't blame the settled people, because most of these settled people with the same surnames as ourselves had actually come from our Gaelic world. You might see the worst in us, and you might see we're the lowest and the outsiders and the outcasts, but we are the living, breathing, standing last Irish clans standing, regardless of what history tells you. That is facts. And we hope, I hope, through Travision, we bring nothing but healing and no more blame and no more shame. And let's embrace the arts. Dublin isn't the worst place in the world. It has its own identity. It borrowed our identity and said we were the outsiders. When in actual fact, Dublin was the ethnic minority with the ethnic minority language, from the Pale and all that kind of stuff. And they have a wonderful, wonderful history themselves. The makings of several blockbuster movies, I've no doubt about that. And that's what I'm into: movies, arts, films. No money, no funding, or anything like that. But I still like the idea of it someday that I will get there and we will paint and correct history where there is no blame or shame. But the continued attack on Irish travellers and the othering of Irish travellers, well, in reality, based on perception, is that the settled people are doing what the English had did to their ancestors, but they didn't know it because they grew up being told things were different. Like, you were never taught about settled identity or anything like that. It was always about the others. With that, have a good day, have a good week, have a good life, and we'll talk to you soon, I hope.